sometimes when you're a new Muslim, you get a prayer chart or a chart with the prayer times from your local masjid, or you might even download an app, and it's got all these words that you're not familiar with, right? Adhan, iqama, dhuhr, asr, etc., etc. And it can lead to a lot of confusion and a lot of misunderstandings. I recently had someone tell me that they thought that they weren't allowed to pray past the iqama. And then other people I know have told me that they used to think that they had to pray right at the adhan time, and that the prayer wasn't acceptable if they waited. And so there's a lot of kind of misunderstandings that can happen. So the way that prayer times work is that prayer times, they exist in a window, right? It's not a moment. You have a whole window of time where you're allowed to make that prayer. And each window has a beginning and an end. The adhan is the beginning of that window. So if we say the dhuhr adhan, that's the beginning of that window of time where you're allowed to make dhuhr. You can't make dhuhr before it. You have to wait till at least the adhan of dhuhr happens. But you have until the adhan of the next prayer time to make that prayer, right? So the time to make dhuhr is from the adhan of dhuhr all the way until the adhan of asr. Any time in between those two, you can make your dhuhr prayer. And the same goes for the next prayer. So for asr, the beginning of the time for asr is the adhan, and then the end of the time for asr is the adhan of maghrib, and so on and so forth. The only difference is with the Fajr prayer. The Fajr prayer is a little bit special because the beginning is the same. The beginning of the Fajr prayer time is the adhan, but the end is something that maybe you'll see on a prayer chart, ishraq or shuruq, which has to do with not dhuhr, but when the sun rises. So that's the end of the time for Fajr prayer. So you don't have to worry if you're a student, if you're in school, if the adhan time comes, you don't have to run out of your class and pray right then. You don't have to get yourself in trouble with your employer. You can wait until your next break or your next moment in between classes, or even until you're finished work. If it's within that entire prayer window, then you're good, right? Now, what's the iqama? The iqama is simply whatever masjid you're following, or whatever masjid gave you that prayer chart, then that is when they gather in the actual masjid to pray. It has nothing to do with when your prayer is allowed to happen, are you allowed to do it before or after? It has nothing to do with that. It's simply that if you want to go to the masjid and make the prayer with other people, that's the time that they're meeting. That's the appointment time to make that prayer in that masjid.